E-commerce Gold is brought to you by Rewind. Accidents happen. Maybe you installed an app and it messed up your theme, or a store collaborator deleted product images by mistake. It's a common myth that Shopify has a backup that you can use when something goes wrong with your store. The fact is they don't. That's untrue. That myth is busted. So what do? You use Rewind to equip your Shopify store with automated backups. Rewind should be the first app you install to protect your store against human error, misbehaving apps, or collaborators gone bad. It's like having your very own magic undo button. It's trusted by over 100,000 businesses, from side hustles to the biggest online retailers like Nix, Lord & Taylor, and Moomin. It's even a Shopify Plus certified app. Best of all, visit rewind.com/e-commerce gold and get your first month for absolutely nothing, free on us. The Ecom Gold podcast has partnered with Clearco to provide you with financial tools to grow your business without having to give away equity. Clearco is the world's largest e-commerce investor and growth platform, giving founders the financial tools, capital, and network they need to grow. Plug in your Shopify store and your loan could be agreed within just 24 hours. Visit clear.co/partner/Vixer, VIXXR, for exclusive deals, £1,000 off your first loan as a podcast listener, and more information. This show is brought to you in collaboration with Vixer, a leading Shopify agency with a mission to grow and migrate brands to Shopify Plus. They've worked with some of the world's largest brands and can help you level up your e-commerce performance. Visit Vixer.com, VIXXR.com for more information. Heber, thank you for coming on to the E-commerce Gold podcast. I'm a big fan of Buttery Bros and I've seen every episode, including all of the films, and I actually largely accredit my love for CrossFit to your content. In fact, that's how I discovered CrossFit. Can you introduce yourself, let everyone know a bit about who you are, what Buttery Bros is, and the businesses that you're involved with?
Yeah, so my name is Heber Cannon. I'm out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I have been making content and making videos ever since I was a little kid. So for the last basically 30 years, making video and content and short films throughout all of junior high and high school. And then after I graduated college, I had been doing my own production company, working on documentary films, and with the intention of going down to LA and working in Hollywood. But I stumbled across this sport called CrossFit. I fell in love with it and started working for that company for about 10 years. And then in 2019, I started my own YouTube channel called the Buttery Bros, where we travel around the world. We work out with different people. We eat pancakes, and we do some adventure tourism where we can. Awesome.
And your co-host Mars as well.
Yep, with my co-hosting good friend Mars and Sawyer. So you can see over your right shoulder, I believe.
We're back to front. There he is. Can you tell us a bit about your personal, and dig into a bit about your personal and professional backstory? Just take us through some of those key moments as far back as you want to go that led you to sort of who you are and where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I've just always been a fan of movies and cinema. And so growing up, I spent hours in front of the television watching and didn't really realize that I was actually just studying and learning storytelling. And my older brother was a filmmaker in high school. He loved making videos, and he would do these sketch comedies for the local high school assemblies when all the kids would gather and watch them. And around that time, a very popular movie was Back to the Future. And he went back to the future to find out how he became such a cool senior. And his younger version of himself, when he went back a couple of years, was me. And that was my very first experience in front of a camera and around the whole process of filmmaking. And I loved it. I thought it was super fun and entertaining. And so from that point forward, I would just love making videos. I would get my friends together. We'd make skate videos. We'd do any kind of, I remade the movie Aliens when the third movie, not even a great alien movie, but I remade that one when I was a little kid. Just having fun with the camera. And then throughout all of high school, I would document all the fun things that we did. And at the end of the year, I'd make a highlight video of 2002, So it was always something that I did and always something that I had fun with. And then somewhere around my senior year, I realized that I could do this for a living. Like I always had intentions of going to be a stockbroker or some sort of business thing. And then I realized that I could just turn my passion into something financially successful. And really from that point forward, I've never looked back. This is all I've ever done.
Yeah, it's awesome. And throughout that time, you've built a friendship and a professional relationship with a lot of the top athletes, employees of CrossFit, leaders of companies in the CrossFit space. Can you talk to us about how you've grown that network and why it's important for you to break down some of those barriers? And actually, I'm sure you can call a lot of those people friends.
Yeah, lots of those people are my friends. So to kind of give more backstory on my relationship with CrossFit, I worked for CrossFit for, like I said, 10 years. And my time there was great. I went there and as a really young kid right out of college, I was given really big responsibilities. So my responsibility, my first year working for them, was helping them come up with a studio desk show, which I had no intention of desk shows or live TV shows. But they needed it, so I helped them out with that. And then they needed a pilot for an ESPN, or a pilot for like a live show. What's a live show going to look like? And so we created that, and then that landed us a deal with ESPN. And then my job was to direct the live show. So now we're going to the CrossFit Games in 2011. I'm sitting in a production truck and I'm telling cameramen which camera, there's a switching from camera A to camera B to camera C. And there's a guy in the back working sound, and there's another technical director next to me. And like, I had never done anything like this, but I'm in this, high production chair directing a really big show. And then that fall, we did 16 post-produced shows where we take all of that live content and now narrow it down to like a 30-minute show that went on to primetime ESPN. And so anyways, my job with CrossFit for a long time was to really help them with their media. And that led to me having a lot of freedom because I did all the grunt work there. And now I can go do kind of what I wanted to do, which was more filmmaking. And so in 2014, I produced my first feature film, Froning the Fittest Man in History. That did really well for CrossFit and put them in front of a new audience. And then from that point forward, my job was every year to produce a new documentary about the CrossFit Games. And so through that process of working with them as a company and helping them elevate their media game, I'm also developing relationships with every athlete there in the space and learning through years of both in broadcast and in people's homes, getting intimate moments with them or behind the scenes of the CrossFit Games, how to develop really long-lasting relationships with these people, because everybody kind of needs each other. Like the athletes need CrossFit's headquarters, their business, and that sport, so that they have a sport where they can showcase their capabilities. And the sport needs these athletes to help promote the sport, and what the company is interested in is long-term health. And these guys are like the pinnacle of what you can be in terms of human capacity. And so there's this symbiotic relationship between the two, and I'm kind of centered between them because I'm having to build a trusting relationship that these people will let me into their homes, and also being able to put something really cool together that somebody would want to watch later in a film. And so that, when in 2018, when I left and started doing my own thing, I saw I love this sport. I love filmmaking, and I love physical fitness and health. And so it's just a really fun way to blend all of these things together with filmmaking. And so I've continued to develop that relationship on both sides with CrossFit and with the athletes in the space.
Makes a lot of sense. So can you dive into a little bit about why you transitioned into doing your own thing? Because it sounds like you were a great fit at CrossFit. You brought a lot to the company in terms of innovation, and I'm sure the Froning film did a lot better than expected, possibly based on previous content. I mean, everything sounds like it's going very well. The company's benefiting from your content, your ideas. They're allowing you to execute. So just give us some idea about how that split happened and maybe why, if you can.
Sure. Yeah, we were fired. That kind of sums it up, but I'll explain why a little bit. So in 2014, we made Froning. And when we made Froning, I had to in my mind, it was a film. And up to that point, they had done TV and they had done YouTube. And that's all they wanted to do. They didn't want to do, they were not interested in like they didn't see it as a financial thing. And I was like, look, I don't care about the money. I don't care if it makes any money. I just want our movies to be recognized as movies and to be on Netflix and on iTunes. And I think it's going to do really well, and it's going to help. It's going to help grow everything. And flash forward, the day we released the movie on iTunes, after convincing everyone to do it, we're the number 2 movie on iTunes, number 3, just behind Jurassic World and Entourage. And that now puts CrossFit in front of millions of viewers that are buying movies on iTunes. And then later it gets picked up on Netflix. And again, that's millions of viewers that are watching this thing that had never seen it before. And that from that point forward, they're like, oh, we want more of this. So then we created more movies, and because this is working. Well, in 2018, the CEO was looking at the business and everyone's very excited about the CrossFit Games. Everyone's talking about the sport. And there's this whole other arm of the business that's like more profitable and bigger actually, which is their CrossFit training program and like affiliates and gyms around the world. And when you look at the CrossFit Games, that isn't what's happening in the boxes every day. It's a kind of an example of it, but it's not what's there. And so for him, he wanted to make a really big change. And so he changed dramatically the sport. He changed how the sport was, he changed the structure of how people qualify for the CrossFit Games, what the CrossFit Games is going to look like. And another big thing that he did was he was like, I no longer want to cover this. Everyone that's basically working in the media department is working on the CrossFit Games. We're going to let go of everyone in the media department. And so we were pulled aside and told like, hey, your movies have done so well. They're so well received. They're so well produced. They've grown the company so fast in a direction that we didn't want to go, that we're now having to make these major changes. So congratulations and thank you. But you guys are going to have to move on. In my head, I was like, oh, okay. Well, if you guys aren't going to do this, I want to continue to do this because I know there's an audience for this. I know that I feel like somewhat responsible for these athletes because I've helped them grow in this space. I would like to continue to support them by continuing to make movies about them. And so when we left in 2018, I spent the next 2 or 3 months really deciding on if I wanted to continue in CrossFit or go down to Hollywood. And I went down to LA and took a bunch of meetings, but I just kept coming back to this sport and coming back to doing this. And so in 2019, we set out to make our next feature documentary, which was eventually became The Fittest. And the Buttery Bros YouTube channel really was just a way to, it started out as just, we're going to document our behind the scenes and what we're doing while we're making this. But our big thing, our main focus was the film. And that's really what it was for the first few months from at the beginning of 2019.
It's amazing. And I just want to rewind on that slightly because it's something that I see less now, but certainly around the time that you were talking is C-suite or high-level executives, including people who are running the company, taking a lens from a balance sheet perspective and not being able to attribute value from creative. And it's something that we see a lot and we heard about a lot, but I think this is possibly the biggest version of that with where you are now and what you've done since. Do you think it was simply an inability to attribute value to the work that was being done? Because for me and you, it seems obvious, and I'm sure for the listeners, that is creating value for the business versus what it would be your salaries, I imagine, for that team. It must be doing, because we did speak to someone, CrossNet, actually, on one of the previous episodes, and he invented a game which is sort of four-way volleyball. And he was saying something, he was featured on ESPN and they had a load of coverage and that's good, but it's not what drives the profit in the business. So I almost heard a little bit of what you're saying there coming through in him where, yeah, creative's good, but actually, we're focused on selling units. What do you think was the driver behind the decision to let the media team go? Do you think it was an issue with not being able to see the value of the content or more of a focus on actually we just want to focus somewhere else in the business?
Honestly, I think it was a combination of both because I don't think that they were very money driven. They were poor with money decisions. And so I don't think that it was like, hey, this isn't generating revenue. Because if we went to a spreadsheet, I could show them where it's generating revenue. Like our movies alone help cover the salaries of anyone working on them. And so I don't think it's like it was that. I think it was look, like we're spending all this money on media when the second we pull the plug on it, outside people will come and do this. And also he had a really good point, which was like, the NFL covers there's two sides to this coin. The NFL doesn't cover the sports of the NFL. Like, they don't cover the news about it. ESPN does, and they're an outside news agency. And there's a relationship between ESPN and the NFL. But my argument to that was like, but the NFL has NFL Films, and they create their own media that supports and markets that brand, and they control the narrative there. And his thinking was that they could have outside people come in and do this, and they could control the narrative, but they couldn't control that narrative. And in the end, that actually, he was sort of ousted out of the community, and it probably ended up costing him the CrossFit space in the long run, because he couldn't control what the media was saying about him. But for us, we kind of, so I'm flipping both sides of this coin, because he was right in that we left and we covered the sport in a really the same way, if not cooler, being that we had journalistic freedom and our own creative structure to it, our own voice to it.
So you'd lost essentially your safety net of a salary at this point. You went through a process of deciding whether to continue your journey with CrossFit or go to the big H down in LA. And you decided to continue with CrossFit and create content, but this raised the question of being able to pay the bills. So how did you monetize in the early days? Did you have some kind of financial cushion that you could just utilize and run with? How did you make that work?
Here, let me shut this door real quick. My kid's playing piano. You might
no worries.
But yeah, I've got a good answer for you. Okay, so 2019 we started this channel. We set out to make. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do, and I was still taking LA meetings at this time. And we were talking about making a documentary series about the CrossFit season. So at the time, it wasn't just going to be a feature film; it was just going to be a series of. It was going to be more than one thing. It was going to be like a 4-part or 6-part series about the 2019 CrossFit Games season, because everything was up in disarray and weird. But we didn't have any financial backing, and we were taking calls from brands that wanted to come in and be like, hey, we want to own part of the movie. We're going to fund you guys. We're going to do this. We have this production company we want you to work with. And it didn't seem to fit, because anyone that I talked to was like, they had their wants, they had their creative control. Like, hey, we want to do this and we want you to cover these athletes. But I didn't want to have that I don't want to be tied down to anything specific, because I wanted to be able to do whatever we wanted in the space and work with any athlete that we thought was interesting. And also, if you work with one brand, say they have a conflicting sponsor with some of the athletes. So if I'm working with someone that's sponsored by Reebok, or if I'm working with Reebok and they were the title sponsor of the CrossFit Games, are they going to be upset that I'm filming with Matt Fraser, who's a Nike athlete? So that's sort of the example of what we're working with. Although Reebok and Nike were neither one of the brands that were asking about this film. So we ended up saying, hey, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to just try and do this on our own. But we still had to figure out how to make money and how to make this thing, because it's not cheap, and it's a lot of work, and it's months of work to do it. And the CrossFit Games are still 7 months away. And so we set out to do commercial work for brands along the way. So we would get like, hey, this brand is going to sponsor Matt. We'll go shoot a commercial for him or some content for him. And while we're there, we will use a separate camera and almost a behind the scenes production where we're filming our own documentary stuff. And while we were doing that, we ended up pulling out a camera, and we had been with Matt in Dubai at an event a few weeks earlier. And we said, hey, you did this workout that was really hard. It was called acid bath. We're going to do that in your garage. And so we ended up doing it and filming it. And we had this 10, 15 minute little highlight video of that experience. And we thought it was really funny. We put it on YouTube, and we called ourselves the Buttery Bros. And we didn't really think like there's a lot here. We just thought this would be a fun way to document the process of making the documentary series. So we started with that, and that did way better than we expected. And I remember we had launched the video, and usually on YouTube, I think you have to have 1,000 or 10,000 subscribers. I think it's 1,000. You have to have 1,000 subscribers and a certain number of minutes watched before you can monetize it. And I said, hey, like maybe in a few months we'll be able to monetize this channel, and like that could be another way we can generate revenue. Well, before the hour was over, before we had put up the video, and an hour later we had over 1,000 subscribers. Within the next week, we had 20,000 subscribers, and it became very clear that there was an audience for that type of content. So we proceeded to then do a bunch of commercial work and use that to get wherever we could, where it was like, hey, we're going to be in London, so let's work out with some supplement companies out of London, and this brand here, and we're going to go to this event, and we'll give them content from the event, and we'll also shoot our documentary series. But that became like, it wasn't very financially successful, and you're going from week to week trying to get brands to create content for the brand, and they're not entirely sure what they need or what they're going to use it for. And that became very difficult. And around that time, the season was changing so that it was all online, and no brands wanted to like, we had some struggles there financially. And so I ended up having to like borrow money to pay rent for some of those months, because I believe very strongly at this point. I was like, hey, not only are we able to create content, commercial work for brands or for photos for brands, we have this platform now that's our YouTube channel where we can generate stuff, and like basically we'll create a commercial for you and we'll distribute it for you. So that not only do you have the cost of making something, but now you have the cost of putting it in front of people's eyes. But we do both. We can create it and put it on our channel and put it in front of the viewer. And no one kind of does it this way. We should, like, this is what our focus should be. And so from March through May, we were doing a lot of, we would shoot our Buttery Bros show. We'd land after a red-eye flight and go right into a commercial for another brand, edit that. By the time we finished that, we're on the road again. I'm spending zero time with my family, and I'm getting zero sleep, and it wasn't sustainable. And so about June of that year, we figured we had got to a place where we had done enough brand work for our own YouTube channel that we were able to generate and survive off of the income from that, as opposed to having to do commercial work on top of it. And from that point forward, it became a lot easier to do what we needed to do.
And get a lot more sleep and a lot more time with your family.
Yeah, not quite sleep yet.
Not quite sleep. So you mentioned about distribution there, and that's something that I wanted to talk to you about, because predominantly if YouTube's your primary channel, that's really good, and that's longer format content. But how do you approach some of the other channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all those things? Do you focus on them evenly? Do you just focus on YouTube? And like, what's your strategy around those channels?
Lately, it's been very much YouTube centric, very YouTube. It's our bread and butter. But we focus a lot on social media, and I've just found that Instagram, like the second you feel like you've got it down, they change the algorithm and they change things there, and it's fickle. But YouTube has not been that way. YouTube has been very steady and consistent. And I feel like some of the other shorter form platforms, like you look at the history of social media, where there used to be Vine, and then there was Snapchat, and now there's this. Like, there's always something that's moving, and they're changing and evolving depending on where the youth is. And so you have to sort of have your finger on the pulse of what's going on there, and putting content on all of it. But for me, like this, as long as I'm taking care of YouTube, everything else will kind of sort itself out. And when you can use one to boost the other, that's great. But really, it's been our biggest platform that we're putting content on is YouTube, and then our Patreon, and then every now and then our bigger projects will go on like iTunes.
Mm-hmm. And you're smart about it as well. Like, I've seen, obviously I follow you on most platforms, that you will be shooting something and then you'll take the time to do an Instagram live, or you'll shoot a story whilst you're doing that. You're still doing it all yourselves primarily, from what we see. But you're doing it, you're not having to set out and create separate Instagram content, separate YouTube content. You're kind of creating it all in the same bubble. Is that a good perception? Is that right? Or do you do it slightly differently?
Yeah. I mean, we've tried to get to a place where, like when we were in Hawaii last week, and we were shooting an episode, and we kind of shot everything for the episode, but we were still there for a few days. And so the question came up, like, should we shoot something else for an episode? And I was like, no, let's just put like any free time you've got and anytime you want to do it, like grab a camera and figure out a reel for Instagram and figure out a reel for TikTok. And so that you're generating content around that. But that's something that we, because there's really 2 or 3 of us that are producing these things, we're so focused on the YouTube that sometimes the other elements of it get kind of pushed to the side and don't get the focus that they deserve. But it's something that we work on regularly, which is how to create better social content.
Cool. And outside of making content that you enjoy, which I can see that you obviously still enjoy making the content that you make, how are you identifying content now that you've got some data that the audience wants, and how much does that influence the episodes that you're going to go and create? And then do you perform analysis historically? Do you go back and look at previous episodes? What kind of metrics are you looking for? How do you kind of determine what success looks like from any piece of content?
That's a complicated question because you can't let the audience decide what you're going to do, because you don't want to end up doing what you don't want to do. You don't want to lose that passion. And so I'll look at the numbers and I'll say like I know if we shoot a video that's going to be right up our alley for our audience, like, okay, if I go hang out with this athlete and we go do this, like basically if I just go do a day in the life with this athlete, it's going to do really well. And generally a lot of our audience is going to come watch it. But I don't want to just do that. And that's not my only focus. I think for myself, I would get, if that's all we ever put out, as a viewer, I would have I wouldn't watch all of those. That would start to wane. And so for me, this has been always sort of my North Star is what would I want to watch and what would I want to do? And as long as I'm doing stuff that I want to do, like everything else, it doesn't really matter. Like I'm going to have fun and that's going to be better content. And if it's better content, more people will watch it and share it. And eventually you'll find that audience that wants to watch what you're doing, as long as you're doing creative and fun and new and interesting things. And so we're always evolving what we're doing, and we're always trying to do new things and pushing the envelope of our own life resume and our own life experiences. And I think that makes for a much interesting, longer story through our channel than just constantly doing the same thing every episode.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that audience that you've built has a value to it, whether that was intentional or not. Any audience of a certain demographic in a certain number has value to it. And you have other business interests now outside of just content creation. Can you give us some insight into what those businesses are, your responsibilities in those businesses, and how you came to be involved?
Yeah, so I've got we started a supplement brand with me, Marsden, and Matt Fraser, and another guy named Paul. It's called Podium. It's available nationwide here in the States, and we're working on becoming more international. I was a little late for this podcast because I had a call about that this morning. And my responsibilities there are just helping create creative, fun, and entertaining content. And we don't have specific job titles other than everyone wants to see it succeed. And so we all put in efforts that are needed to help that brand grow. But a lot of the day-to-day responsibilities are held by Paul and a team that he's building over there. And so I have a really fun job there, which is I just kind of like tune in, see where things are going, and say like, hey, let's turn this lever here. Let's get this going over here. And this looks cool. And then anytime we can on our YouTube, we try to create just the most wacky, fun, memorable sketches around that product. That is, I like to think of them as sticky, where like it sticks in your brain and you think about it. And so we just create weird, wacky things for our that fit into our channel, and then eventually we'll cut those out and put them up on their own social media. So that's my job there. Same job, we do that with another company called Krieger Backpacks or Krieger Bags. So we've designed this really sweet backpack that's like the ultimate gym bag. And so helping that brand grow and find its place in this community and in the space has been really fun as well. And then we're working on some other projects yet that I'm not able to talk about.
Sure. And you do such a good job in all of your episodes of weaving in the sponsors, I think really naturally, very authentically, and in most cases they actually add value to the episode, in my opinion. The Go Wad segment and the Whoop segment particularly, I use both of those products actually as a result of you. So yeah, so and that's great, because now I feel part of that team, and it's kind of like an interactive moment in each episode where I'm also checking my data while you're talking, and that's just like a cool thing. And obviously I understand it's also advertising for them. So can you give us like some insight into your agreements with those companies, how they're measuring success from your content, how you partnered with them, and kind of what you look for in a sponsor relationship?
Well, I think why our content becomes, why that specifically, it's like it's advertising in our show, right? But it comes across as authentic and true, because I'm a consumer and I want these things. I want to have the best mobility possible. And if there's an app where I can download on my phone and I can say, hey, my ankle hurts, and I can just click on a little human body and say, like, this is what I want to work on, and then it'll generate a bunch of things for me to do for that one muscle. Like, that's cool. Same with Whoop. Like, I'm interested in my data that I have. I'm interested in my heart rate variability, how much I slept last night, how well I slept last night. And so we look for brands where we would use them if they weren't paying us anyways. And we look for relationships where it's mutually beneficial. And so, like with sunglasses, we have these sunglasses that we're wearing in that photo behind you. Like, I bought 10 pairs of those sunglasses before we were ever working with them, because I liked the look, and I liked the price point, and I thought it was an interesting brand, and I wanted to support them. And now I support them in a much bigger way, where we have our own signature sunglasses with them. And so that's how we look for brands. And then when we have conversations with them, it's about, like, what are their goals? What do you guys want to do? How do you guys see, what are the metrics you guys want to see out of this? And a lot of them, some have been very vague in terms of, like, hey, we just want to be like, we just want to be cool, and we want to be recognized, and we want our brand out there, and this is a great channel for it. And so, very key organic, like low key organic integration is great. And then other brands, like, we just kind of stumbled upon building this community on Whoop, but we have, over 20,000, 25,000 people that are on the Butter gang on Whoop, that can compete against each other with daily workout, with daily data, and who has the highest strain, who slept the most. And so that's where we pull from that on our show and pick winners every week on that. But it's finding what the brand wants, what they would like to see, and then helping to integrate creative and fun ways to help them grow as well through our show. And but it initially starts with that relationship of do we like the product? Do we trust it? Does it work? And would you want your mom to buy it? Like, I wouldn't want my mom to buy something if I wouldn't want to be pushing this to my audience if I wouldn't want my mom to buy it for her own self as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And a lot of the people listening won't be creators themselves. There'll be people who operate businesses, and they might be interested to know a bit about the best relationships with sponsors in terms of paying for sponsorship. In your experience, have you worked a few different models? For example, just like a flat fee, or on like a more of an affiliate code basis or share of revenue. But also, just for clarity, I've seen that most of your sponsorship agreements are for quite a long period of time, multiple episodes in most cases, rather than like short 1 or 2 specials. Can you dig into any of that at all?
Yeah. So back in 2019, what made us move away from doing commercial work was when we started to realize the value of long relationships. And so when we were starting every episode, I was calling brands and being like, hey, this week I'm going to this event and these athletes will be there. Do you want to sponsor our show? And they'd be like, yes, no, yes, we want this, but because this athlete's in it, we don't want to do that. And we randomly did this episode with this guy named Steve Cook, who's a very famous fitness guy, but he's not at all in the CrossFit space. So all the CrossFit brands were like, like we could maybe sponsor this. And we got a bunch of low offers, and it was all one-off things. but the episode smashed. It did so well. And at the time, it was our most viral episode, and that in the first, somehow like the first week it did okay. And then after that it jumped and it got like 180,000 views in a weekend or something like that. It did crazy. And now we have that metric where we could say like, look, like it doesn't matter. Like you're trying to focus on us being at an event, but we get better views when it's just one-on-one with these athletes. And the athlete knows that we might have a conflicting sponsor, and we won't push that sponsor when it's them in front of their face, but we have to pay for this somehow. And so Whoop became our very first, they saw the success from that immediately, and we're like, oh, we want to do more. And so we did, instead of doing a one-off, we then did, I think, a 3-month deal with Whoop, and there were some specifications about like which episodes they got. But they, for presenting, but they were going to get like general branding in every episode. And so then we did that with other brands. And then we got to a place where we were still doing like one-off episodes, but then it took a while, but everybody understood, hey, if we show up more in the episodes, it's going to be a lot more authentic. It's going to be easier for people to grasp. And then we're also showing up across multiple, like there's just a lot more bang for your buck if you're doing it for 3 episodes or 6 months. And now for us, it's just so much. We're like, our job as creators, you want us creating for you. And if we have, if we're focused on trying to land another contract, we're not doing the best job for you, because we're having to renegotiate every week or every month. So now we're at a place where every brand we work with, it's at least a 6-month minimum, but I think there's maybe one brand that we're doing a 6-month thing. Everyone else is a 12-month deal, because it's just so much. It's a way better integration overall.
I guess, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess that allows you to invest. It's clear to anyone, if you haven't seen, obviously go and watch a YouTube video, but it's very clear the production value is very high, the animation of each of the sponsors, from the GoWod segment to the Whoop segment, there's lots of animation. And for anyone that knows anything about editing, that takes time. And to do all of those things, and to bother to do all of those things rather than just having like a banner that pops out saying Whoop on it or something like that, it's much more valuable for the brand, for the audience, and in general makes the advert seem less adverty. And I guess that's something you can get when you do a longer term agreement. But my question is, there'll be people listening to this that have a very strong opinion on how their brand should be presented. They may even want to provide the creative. What would you say for and against that as a creator?
Anytime that we've had a brand that wants to control what the creative is, that relationship's never lasted. We've had a few of those early on that we were like, I love this one brand. I love their product. It was so delicious. And then but every time we talked to them, it was like pulling hairs, and they'd be like, oh, but you did this. And I was like, but look how many people are watching it. And like how many people are buying your product now as a result of it. And they were like disappointed with maybe I don't even think they were disappointed. Like they just had so much instruction on the front end that it wasn't even fun as a creative. And if you look at I love this not analysis, but I look at some other YouTubers. Like I study YouTubers quite a bit now, and how they integrate brands. And it's always like a cutaway from the episode or from their show, and be like, hey, this episode is presented by Blue Chew or presented by this. And it's this long, like 1.5-minute discussion, not even a discussion, just like telling you about the product that's clearly written by the brand. And the person has like zero influence on if they like it, or if they're like, yeah, I use it, but you don't see them using it. They're just like, literally, I saw one the other day where it was like, you're watching this boxing thing, and then it cuts to this creator in his hotel room being like, hey, thanks to this brand for bringing me out here, because it's really cool, and I clearly use this product. You can see it's on my hand. And like, it's not authentic. It's very much like this brand wrote this and they paid for this guy to go do this thing, but they're not like, it's not real. And so you have to be very careful. I understand that brands, like I would have a hard time handing Podium over to another creator and being like, hey, do this. But I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't work with someone that I didn't trust. And I wouldn't work with someone that wasn't a fan of the brand and wanted to see it grow. And so, it starts with that, finding the right person for that job and then trusting that they're going to do it. If they're a high octane creative individual, they're going to knock it out of the park. And if they're not, you shouldn't be paying them anyways. You shouldn't be hiring them.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think there's a lot of brands that can learn from that. Let the creators create and just choose the right creators. Don't try and control the creators. Just on that, I mean, you've probably got an opinion better than anyone's on, if put yourself in the perspective of a business owner. Would you encourage a business to stand up a team internally of creatives and to produce content internally? Or would you encourage a business to find and source creators that already exist and partner with them versus trying to, because you've done both sides, right? What would your take be on that? If you were to start a new business today in a completely different sector, would you stand a team up internally or would you go external?
So what we're doing with Podium is both. So we have us that we're technically external, but like I'm part of the company, but I'm not every day creating content for Podium. And you need that much content. Like if you're not generating content daily for a brand on social, like you're missing a massive, almost it's not free marketing, but it's a massive audience that you're not talking to. And it's a great way to connect with people and know what your audience wants and serve them. Like how can you better serve them than talking to them daily through social media? The only better way to do it is in person, and it's kind of hard to do these days. So work with creatives that are doing things that are unique and growing your audience in a fun and broad way, but also generating your own content so that when people do come to your channel, that's where you can control it and you can say like, this is the brand, this is who we are. You might have seen us on X, Y, and Z, but this is what it looks like, and this is what you're getting into.
Cool. And can you just tell us a little bit about, when you launched your channel, did you ever pay for growth on any of the social media platforms to boost your views or advertising to grow the channel, or have you done it organically from day one? Like what would you say helped you grow your channel the most, and did you use paid to do so?
We've done some paid on YouTube when brands ask for it, because like they'll be like, hey, we want to do this, can we also do ad spend? And that's kind of a win-win in my opinion, because and the return rate on that's great, because when it, you're basically a commercial in front of another YouTube video, but if your content's interesting and fun, like people are going to stick around and they're watching more of what you're doing, and it's not just like an ad. Essentially, it's a long TV show. And so we've done some ad spend on YouTube with great success. On Instagram, it's never like, and none of this is ever to grow it. It's just to get in front of more eyeballs. And for social media, we only do that when it's like, if you don't do it on social media, I feel like Instagram will put the brakes on your channel. Like, I think they're like, oh, you're running an ad, but you're not paying for it, so this isn't going to go in front of anybody. And so the algorithm, I think, will hurt you if you don't do some paid advertising on social. And we only do that when it's like, hey, we're like when we announced our backpack, we did some paid advertising behind the backpack, and some of the other merchandise stuff that we do.
And back in the early days of Buttery Bros in your YouTube channel, or was that all organic?
When we first started, no, we didn't do anything like that for a long time.
Okay, cool. There's a big question in e-commerce with companies that are startups that have limited budgets about whether they should do lots of quick and dirty content, get a phone out, shoot, or a lot less but more high quality content once a month, bi-monthly. What would you suggest? What would your take be on that with the experience that you have?
I think more is, I hate to say more is better, but in a way more is better when you're doing it right on all levels. And so know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. And if like we always you have to and know what the platform is that you're distributing on. So if you're distributing on YouTube, if it's all just vertical iPhone stuff, that's not going to be something that people are watching long form or on their TVs. But if you're watching, but if you're on like like we would go out and shoot these, we produce these big YouTube shows, right? And then we cut up a very highly produced, slick thing for Instagram, like a reel, and it'll do okay. But then I'll be in the audience at an event and I'll film something on my iPhone and put it up instantly, and that'll explode, And it's frustrating because it's like, that's just my iPhone and I'm just going like this and I get this, but I'm getting all this social views as a result of being in the moment and raw with the phone as opposed to overproduced. And so there's definitely a balance between having authentic and cool stuff that is in the moment, that is shot on an iPhone, that's super low budget. And then the other side of it, which is you really have to generate an interesting story with an arc and characters in it and a beginning, middle, and end if you're doing anything longer form. And so do both if you have the opportunity.
Give us a quick idea of your content, because you have medium length episodes, I would say. How much time is spent planning that in hours roughly per episode, would you say?
Not a whole lot. We plan fairly on the go. Like we'll just think of, like, the second the idea hits, it's like, oh, that's gonna be cool, let's go. And so like we're doing one, and it also depends on what the episode is. So like we just published an episode literally today that is about me doing I went out a couple of days ago and did a 17-mile paddle in a kayak down the Nepali coast in Kauai, Hawaii, in the ocean. And then we get off and we walk 50 or 31 miles up to the highest point of the island. And like the second I heard about that, I was like, awesome, I'm going to go do it. And Marsden was off doing something else and wasn't going to be there. So I was like, I don't even care. It doesn't need to be an episode. But then like I think he got FOMO and came out. So it became an episode, and it wasn't like we planned this whole thing. It was just like this event was happening and our friends invited us and we were like, we're going to bring cameras and we're going to document it. And I didn't even have a GoPro on the boat. Like, it was very poorly planned, but we got really lucky that there were some people there filming and we were able to put together a story with it. And then there's other episodes like, we have one coming up that we've talked to someone that's going to bring us food. We've got this set up and we've planned, probably 5 hours of planning around that one episode, but not a lot of planning, just because the idea is, when they come, it's like, we just kind of know, Mars and I work really well together and we know exactly how to execute and where we need to be. But as we grow, we do try to do a little bit more planning and keep people a little better in the know, because he and I kind of have our own language almost.
Makes it easier for whoever edits it as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whoever's job that is. So just a couple more questions before the lightning round. You've got a really engaged audience. You can see that across all of the channels that you operate. And did you set out to create a particularly engaged audience? Was it just something that happened naturally? How do you keep people engaged? Do you have any tips to keep audience engagement up?
So we didn't set out to like build an audience. It was just like, hey, we're gonna go do this thing. If you guys want to follow along, do it. But we're gonna do it either way, if we have an audience or not. But like, as we built it now, like, and I think that's almost a fault of ours. Like, we never, like, looking at other YouTubers, they're always like, subscribe. Like, if you watch, I was watching one the other day, and 4 times throughout a 10-minute video, they had a little bubble widget come up that says like, subscribe to our channel. And at the end of it, he talks about subscribing to the channel, and talks about like goals that he and the audience is now going to have. Like, hey, we're going to do this. I was watching this guy named Eric, and he was saying, hey, by the end of the year, I'm trying to have 10 million followers. And if we do it, Pizza Hut is going to build the world's largest pizza. I already have a DM from them on Instagram if we can pull this off. And so now his audience is all excited about like, oh, hey, I want to see this pizza. So now I'm talking about Pizza Hut. So I'm already talking with this brand that I'm working with. And B, like, I'm invested. I'm going to comment. I'm going to subscribe. And we're learning that too. So lately we've been doing massive giveaways on the channel for anyone that comments. So if you comment on the latest video, like I'm about to head to the UPS store to ship out a bunch of gifts, from protein to sunglasses, to subscriptions to GoWatt or Whoop, just based on people that have commented on our channel. And so giving back is one way that we've done this. And then by generating people to by encouraging people to comment and subscribe on the channel. But that's just one way to engage. There's other ways to, like the other way we really have gotten lucky with is that Whoop thing where we're engaging with people on their daily metrics and how they're sleeping and giving back to people that we find through our channel. And then also the biggest way that probably takes the most amount of time of engaging with my audience is DMs on Instagram or comments on Instagram or YouTube, where I try to spend 30 minutes at least a day that's like set apart to just write back to people. But often it's hours a day writing back and trying to comment back to as many people as possible. Like that's the biggest way to communicate and work with your audience, and where they feel like they've engaged with you and it's a two-way relationship. Yeah,
that's, I mean, for an audience member, we appreciate that obviously. But super time consuming, but appreciated. So worth doing.
Cool.
A couple more. So, if I was a business and I had some budget and I'm looking to build my team out, my marketing team specifically around content, what key roles do I need? Do you think? Who do I need in the room? And what kind of equipment would I be looking for? Say, I want to I want to have a good go at producing some content for a brand that turns over, say, 10 million or something like that. So they've got some budget. Who's in my team, and what equipment do they need?
I don't know. It depends on what your appetite is for the budget for it. So at CrossFit, they got really lucky with Marsden and myself, and a handful of other people like Mariah or Ian Wittenberg, or they have a great. We had a large number of what I would call predators, producer director editors that are shooting content, coming back, editing the content, producing it all together. Like essentially they're a one-stop shop. And I think that's generally what a lot of content creators are. And so if you can find someone that's like that likes your brand and wants to support you, and is willing to do it for you and not try to just do their own thing, that's a win-win. Otherwise you need to, have a really talented producer director that can hire contracted employees by the day. So a day rate for talented cinematographers and editors, and kind of manage a team that way. So there's multiple ways to do this. And I'm not entirely sure which is the best way.
What kind of equipment do you guys use? I know you've got Reds, or you used to have Reds at least. What are you running and gunning with?
So we've depending on the project and the budget, like I hate dragging around a Red, but it's such a beautiful looking camera. And weirdly enough, like I own one of the reasons that I'd bring a Red is to make people feel like, oh, we're bringing out the big guns today. But 99% of the people watching what you're doing don't care they don't know if it's shot on a Red or a Sony or an iPhone. Like they just want to watch stuff. And a lot of the most viewed content is just through a phone. So remember that when you're producing, like don't be so like in love with your final product that you're missing story beats because you're trying to have the best camera possible there. But we shoot mainly on Sony. We have an A7S III, and I believe they have higher versions of that now. That's like a few years old. We have an A7R4 as like our main photo camera, and that's 99% of the time that's what we're shooting on. And then every now and then we'll bust out a Red, but mainly that's for like documentary projects or real big commercial projects. And even for some of our documentary stuff, we're often shooting on Sonys. Like it's Sony or Canon or just DSLRs. Like cameras today are so high quality that it's really hard to be able to tell the difference.
And are you shooting in 4K mainly?
It depends on the project. So most of the time it's 4K. We've shot everything from 4K to like that Hawaii project. I had a whole bunch of 1080 footage or 2.7K footage. That's, it is what it is, and we're using it. But on like our feature films, we'll often shoot sometimes in anything up to 8K. But then you start to like I know I have a buddy that shoots for some big brands, and all he shoots is 8K. And I'm like, no one can even watch 8K. Like, what's the point? But he has a great point, which is that like they can't now, but they will in 5 years or 10 years. And I want to be ready for that. I want to have an archive of stuff for these brands and for what I'm doing, so that in 10 years I can be at the highest level of displays. And so he's, now there are 8K displays, and he can go back and generate a version of his movies in 8K.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. That's actually an interesting argument. I hadn't heard that one before. But yeah, often when we've done projects in the past, 8K has been like the default, and you do kind of wonder, is it worth the disk space? But that's a good answer now. So Shopify is the store that Buttery Bros is running on, the merchant store, also Podium, and most likely most of the other brands that you work with, because it's the default option. Do you have much of a hand in running any of those stores, or do you leave it to someone else?
I leave it to someone else. Like, I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I'm not great at e-commerce, except that I'm good at marketing. And so I love geeking out on Shopify. I love the metrics that you get. I love the data that you get. And I love seeing like, okay, we did this video, boom, I'm seeing a spike here, or we're marketing this way. We have the most amount of people ever that we've ever had on the website right now live. And so I love being able to see that data and seeing the correlation between what I'm doing on my side versus the business side. But I'm not very educated on Shopify in terms of setting up the website, setting up the store, what the kinks are in the process. I've just had two people that I trust that do that for the Buttery Bros and for Podium. And it works really well for what we do there.
I think that's a super interesting insight, and I think that's something that we'll see more and more, is that creators who have a particular talent partnering with people with more of a strategic or e-commerce background and bringing out products together, which seems to be what you've done with Podium. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Lightning round time. So these are just real quick fire answers. So how many domains do you own?
I think technically 4 or 5.
Yeah, and are they all in operation, or any of them parked?
Some of them, 2 are parked.
Okay. Future projects or projects that never were?
Future projects.
Awesome. What do you love most about Buttery Bros?
Fun. And like our tagline, one of our taglines is spread butter, spread joy. And that's sort of like our North Star. And I love having fun and inspiring people to live bigger and healthier through our channel. And so that's been the most fun part of it. That's what I love doing the most.
It's super clear to anyone watching that you are a devoted husband and family man, and we can see just from watching the content that you intertwine your family in such positive ways, and obviously there's opportunities that you have that you're sharing with them. But how are you balancing what is an incredibly demanding schedule with your personal life, and any tips that you can give on doing so?
Like I'm running businesses, I'm running this YouTube. I have to, when I'm doing planning, it's usually travel. Like right now I'm looking at where we're traveling for the next 2 weeks. And so I'm booking hotels and what adventures we're going to do. I think the biggest thing that people want is your attention, and nobody needs that more than your family, and nobody needs that more than your kids. And so I try to do 2 things. When I'm home, I try to put away my phone. I'm not very great at it, but I try to put away my phone and be very one-on-one with the kids and take them on and build memories with them that are lasting. And so like with this Hawaii trip, that Kauai Hawaii thing was supposed to be just a family thing. Like the Buttery Bros came on as a last minute thing, but it was intentionally, not intentionally, but it was like I planned a family trip, and then it became a semi kind of a work trip, which was great. Because now not only like do I get to hang out with my kids, but they get to be part of this video, and now they can go back and watch themselves in 15 years, and there's a memory there. And there's a memory of them walking with us on the trail, like they're part of these fun adventures. And then when we got home, I had to work a bunch this week, but then like I took last Friday and I didn't do anything except we went skiing. And so it was me and my 2 boys navigating the slopes at Deer Valley, and hopefully they'll remember that. And so just generating memories and giving them attention. That's probably the biggest two things I would tell people.
Do you watch your episodes? Does your wife watch your episodes? Do the kids watch the episodes?
I will go back and watch. I don't watch like every now and then I'll go back and watch them. I love going back and watching like the early ones, and then, I'll skip through and just be reminded about like, oh, hey, we used to do this. These are really funny. We should do that again. But the kids will watch every now and then, but they forget, like they just so in their own little world that they don't know that there's a new episode out. And so if they're in it, they'll watch it. And they used to watch it anytime I was out of town, but yeah. So yes and no. They will watch a bunch, but they're not like diehard subscribers, mainly because they don't know if it's up or not.
Well, I just got a flash up a few minutes ago of a premiere dropping in 30 minutes. So I'm going to have to leave you in a second because I need to go and watch that. But okay, last question then. So how much money in the bank is enough for you to, you can carry on doing Buttery Bros, but as a passion, so you don't need any more income, but what figure would that be for you to just say, cool, money's off the table now, everything I do from this point forward is just things I want to do?
Zero. So like if you're money's not the focus, like money's money. It's a way to make transactions. It's great. And I don't get me wrong, I want to be wealthy and I want to have money in the bank, but you couldn't pay me enough to not do what I want to do. And so like, that's sort of where it came down to. Like commercials would come and be like, hey, we want to pay you to like go do this for us. And I did what the man wanted me to do for them for a really long time. And they fired me for it, and I did a really good job for it. And I made a decent amount there, but it wasn't like I poured my heart and soul into another organization, and I was paid decent, and I was semi-happy, and the relationship was not it was one-sided. It was not at all a mutual relationship between me and that business. And so like, no fault of the people that work there. There was just one individual that made this decision, and it left me like, oh, well, that's why did I do that? I want to always be doing what I want to do, that I'm passionate about, and not let money be the factor that's pushing me to do it. But let having the best life possible be the thing that pushes me to do what I want to do and gets me where I want to go.
Makes so much sense. Heaves, it's been an absolute pleasure. The fact that you're still here at the end of this episode tells me that, one, you must have enjoyed it, and two, you're probably as big of an e-commerce geek as I am. Thank you for sticking around, and I just want to give a special thanks to Rewind, Clearco and Vixer for sponsoring this episode. You can find more information and the offers that are associated with those companies in the show notes below. Please also, if you haven't already, go to ecom.gold and subscribe to Gold Club. You'll get alerts about upcoming episodes. You'll get extra content like playbooks from each of the people and guests that we have on the show. And you'll also get access to some of the exclusive content that we have coming up. And finally, do share the show with your friends. Give us a review. It really helps us to build our audience. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take it easy, and we'll see you next.